Well, thanks for joining me today. I've got a guest, Tim, who is going to talk about dramatic improvements that he has had with not only rheumatoid arthritis, but also Lyme disease. So, if you or someone has suffered with Lyme disease, then this is going to be a very interesting podcast indeed, because he's going to talk about how he was able to use the Patterson program to isolate aspects of his health or the symptoms of these conditions independently, and then work through and be able to get excellent results with both of these serious conditions. So, Tim, who's in upstate New York, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Clint. So I guess I'll just start off. It was back in July of 2015. I woke up while I was visiting my parents, and I got this dreaded red bullseye that everybody hears about Lyme disease. And it's like, okay. So then first treatment, the CDC recommends is doxycycline, 21 days. And I did it. And, I didn't think twice about it. I just went on my merry way and like, okay. But then all of a sudden, it's like one day, like my big toe started hurting. And then I'm like going to the doctor, orthopedic surgeon. And he's like, no, you got arthritis. And I'm like, I don't have arthritis. I've never had arthritis. And then it was just kind of like from there, my health fell apart. It was just one, I could go over all the, depending on which doctor I went to, urologist, I had prostatitis, or if I went to the general practitioner, it was blood pressure. And it's just like one symptom after another. And then it was just kind of like, finally I was like, I think I got Lyme disease. And so I go back to a Lyme doctor, and immediately they put me on doxycycline. And I think I was on it for like 6 months of different, antibiotics, and just kind of like beating my system, down with antibiotics. And I never really felt better after that. But it was like, I was like, okay. My parents were moving in. They were, their health got, worse, and I was having to move in. And then it's like one morning I woke up and my hands were swollen and I couldn't move my joints. And like, what is this? And I always remembered my grandparents, and, actually everybody on my mom's side had joints replaced. And my grandmother would talk about her, rheumatoid, and, her, so I was like trying to like, what is this? And I go to my Lyme doctor, and they do the blood work, and they're like, nope, had the blood work, and it's like the RA factors were all negative. So then I'm like, I see your little daughter in the background.
But you look beautiful, honey. I'm just recording an interview. Okay. Look adorable, honey. Okay, but I just need you to go out now. Okay, bye.
So I was taken aghast by that, because I'm like, everything I'm reading, I'm like, those rheumatoid factors should be positive for the symptoms I'm seeing in both this, both hands, and it's swollen and it's worse in the morning. So then I just start doing research, and I'm like, you were like a kindred spirit, because, you were like, you used the information from doctors, but you did a lot of your own research. And you're like, so I'm like in that same well, I'm like digging into the, internet, and I'm like, what acts like rheumatoid arthritis? But the symptoms aren't, the blood work's not the same. And then I came up with psoriatic arthritis, which you don't get a lot of the factors that, arthritis. And then one of the symptoms was I'd been battling toenail fungus for like years, and I could never get rid of it. And I'm with all these different herbicides and pesticides, and I can never, other drugs that would like be hard on the liver, and I never could get rid of it. And they're showing symptoms of it is it mimics the psoriasis kind of arthritis mimics, toenail fungus, gives you a little lip at the top. And a lot of people think it was like, that was my, perfect. I'm like, that's what I have. Because then once, I saw that symptom, and then I started to look at the fingernails and all the ridges, and I'm like, I got psoriatic arthritis. So then I'm like trying to figure out how to treat that. And I'm like, I go to my general practitioner, and he had some sort of like schooling in rheumatoid arthritis, and he wants to be put on these hard level drugs. And I'm like, I don't want to go on these drugs. I'm like, these are like chemo drugs. And I'm like, and then I'm like, I don't know what to do. But then the symptoms are getting worse, and they're getting worse. And, I'm like, okay, it's probably food related, that I'm like kind of like restrict my diet, and I'm going down to, broccoli and chicken, and it's never get rid of it. And I'm like, God, this sucks, because it's just kind of like I can't, find out what's triggering this, but I'm like, I know it's food related. So then, out of sheer, I guess you'd call it desperation, I came across fasting, and I'm like, okay, let me try this fasting. And I went on a 21 day water fast. And at the end of the 21 days, I was like pain free. I was like, okay, this is related. And then at the same time, my wife was like, you might look at the GAPS diet, because, you might have a leaky gut, and really focusing in on the leaky gut stuff. I started trying the GAPS diet. But then as I'm doing the protein and the fats, it's just like I wouldn't get better. I would just gradually get worse. And I just could never, I'm talking to like all these people about GAPS diet, and the general consensus is, well, if you're not showing improvements, then you're doing something wrong. I'm like, that's not helping me. It's like, I need help, and some, one lady was like, I don't know what to tell you. She had no answer for it. It was like, it's so fat and protein related. And I'm like, this is causing me the problem. And then I was like really focusing in on, I got leaky gut. Okay, I got leaky gut. And then I'm like, I start going back to my Lyme doctor, because I'm like, I really don't know what's going on. And she was an interesting lady. And, at the same time, I did my first stool sample. And then it's like, starting to get those results in. And, this was around December of, a year ago. And I came across your website. And of course, I'm like, I'm a huge skeptic. So I'm doing all the research and, seeing what you had to offer, and, looking at all the free videos, and, the naysayers and the positives. And, so then I go back to my Lyme doctor once I get the stool sample results. And, she's just kind of looking at the stool samples, and she's like, I've seen worse. But then I compare it to what you were talking about, and it's kind of like, the negative was, out, I had the bad bacteria. It's like, yeah, some of them are off the charts high. And then my good bacteria was some of, but she was like dismissive, because she was like, oh, it's only 1 or 2 negative and 1 or 2 positive, that are off. But I'm like, no, you're not reading, I'm reading different from an engineering mind. Because I'm like, you got 8 of them, and like 5 of them are just barely within the band, just because 2 of them are out. And she just didn't see it that way. And I'm like, well, what this other one is saying non-detectable, but you're not flagging that as, so it's like, I didn't agree with it. But it was kind of like she was a necessary evil, because I needed her to get some of the blood work done, and I needed her to get some of the testing done. So, and then she also did me on the Lyme test again. And she's like, yeah, you're positive for Lyme. And she was like, what do you want to do? And she was like, I recommend you going back on antibiotics. And I just came across your website then, and I was like torn about, should I sign up for it? My wife was like, it's $100. You don't hesitate to spend $30 on supplements. You got a drawer for supplements, and you don't hesitate. Why are you squabbling over $100? So I signed up. You were the only one that spoke truth. All the symptoms I'm seeing, feeling, they were there. So I'm like, I got to try it. And, it's just like everything you would say, you're going to do it, GI tracks. And yeah, my samples came back just like what you said. So I started on, down that path. And I didn't want to do the antibiotics again. For everything, I'm reading them, it's like, it's my gut bacteria. I've got to get this healthy, I'm like, and I didn't know how it would end, because I'm like, I got this Lyme and my immune system's totally out of whack right now. But I'm like, I need the strength in my gut bacteria. And later on, I'll deal with the Lyme. I don't know how I'm going to do that, but later, I got to get my body healthy. My body is not healthy at the moment. So I went on your protocol, and there was ups and downs. I didn't mind the celery. And the one problem I had is I right now, currently, I work in a semiconductor fabrication unit. So I'm, during the day, when I'm at work, I'm head to toe in gowning. I have the full clean room suit, and it's really pain in the ass to go to the bathroom.
So, I know exactly what's that like. I used to work in the exact same clean room. I used to work in what's the name of it? What's the name of those clean rooms where you've got to be complete? Like, is it vacuum sealed where you go through two doors and you get changed in
Yes.
the middle? Yeah, I used to work in the exact same environment. We used to make fiber optic filters, and we used to
Okay.
use laser beams to put these wavelength splitting filters into these fiber optics. So I understand it is a pain in the ass. Takes you 3 or 4 minutes to get dressed and 3 or 4 minutes to get undressed. So you don't want to be going to and from too much.
And it was like, to get to where I needed to work, it was like, from my time I got the gowning, it would take a half an hour to get the machine and then go to the bathroom. So it was like a half an hour, 45-minute cycle. And I'm like, the juicing kind of became a problem for that. So I was like, I really need to regulate my fluids before I go to work, but then I don't really want to heavily, So the system I ended up coming into was, I'd start out the morning and I'd do my big juicing in the morning. And then I was sensitive to the matter. Like, I didn't want to immediately eat because, I'm reading, like, I want to make sure my stomach acid was at the peak performance before I ate any of the greens or the buckwheat. So I'd always wait, usually about an hour, until I could start passing the fluid. And then, like, okay, the fluids are out of my system. Now I can eat. And then I got into that kind of habit was, drink my drink, wait an hour and a half, eat my meal. And then I was always doing that kind of intermittent fasting where I'd have a morning meal and a nighttime meal. So trying to keep it 12 hours apart, just trying everything. I'm like pulling information all over the web, like, okay, what is going to work for me? So that's kind of generally the basis that I got into the morning juicing meal. And where I came into come up with another tidbit was supplementing with acid. So I came across, it was like, I think it was something on the internet. You take some baking soda and you take and then you time how long it would take you to burp or so, it was like, and if you didn't do it within 5 minutes, you were low on stomach acid. And then it's like, oh, well, you start dosing yourself until you feel the heartburn and, kind of go plump. I was like off the charts, like low on stomach acid. So I kind of even hesitate to tell you how many, milligrams I was taking because I don't want to, leave people down. But it was a handful.
Right. But you were taking the supplements of betaine hydrochloride, which is easily available online. And we have to watch that we don't get ones that contain papain, which is like pig's thyroid or something. But a lot of them come with papain, a digestive enzyme for proteins. I mean, the net benefit of taking it's still probably going to be there. But if anyone's, strict about these things like I like to be, you can get just betaine hydrochloride without the papain. Yeah.
So then, I'd take, when I was eating, I'd take those hydrochloric acid supplements, and then I would take digestive enzymes. And then the other one is from the pineapple, the beta bromelain. So I had this kind of system. I was like, at the time I'm eating, got this handful of pills and I'm eating. And I got to the point where if I didn't do it, I could actually feel the results. It was like, if I missed, it was like generally 24 to 36 hours later, the symptoms started coming in, and it would take 5 days for those symptoms to clear. So
wow.
Did I have to do everything right? I had to be perfect when timing, and it just really sucked because I'm like, I had to be so regimented. And then, so I'm like sitting on your diet and I'm like, okay, I'm on the baseline meal and I'll be like trying everything. Okay. Miso, reacted to it. It's going down the list. Papaya, reacted to it. I'm reacting to everything. I just didn't get a break. I take that back. I did broccoli and cauliflower. I'm like, okay, that's helping me. But that was the only thing. And the system was, I'd try it, I'd react it, I'd have to take 5 days to clear. And it was just slow and, just kind of like going along. But, everywhere you're along, I kept hearing your voice, like, you're just expecting 1% improvement. Just hope for 1% improvement. And I generally was getting better, just generally getting better. And, it was like 6 months, I had my GI tract done again. And everything was better. My bad bacteria was basically all back within. My good bacteria was still a little weak, but I'm like, I think you had went, discussing that before, and you basically have to kill off the bad before the good can grow out of that. So I'm like, Clint's right again. I'm progressing. My body's reacting to everything that you've said it's going to, just taking slow time. But the problem is I'm just on that baseline meal, and it just like slow away and just like, oh my God, this sucks.
Sure.
It's like everything I tried. My family would try the papaya and they hated it. And I'm like, I tried it. I just wish I could have this, but I reacted to it. So I was like, okay, just doing the baseline and just getting no relief. But generally I'm getting better, slightly better. But then it reached the point where I'm like, I baselined and it was like, I'm not really improving, and I'm just kind of like, now what do I do? And that's when I was like going back to my doctor and I'm like, we need to look at the Lyme now, because it was like, I was healthy as I could be because I'd get up in the morning, I'd have my rheumatoid arthritis just in my hands. And I'd basically have that effect until 10 a.m., 12, and then I would go normal. And, I was like, okay, this is better than I was, 6 months to 8 months ago, but, it's still not where I should be. And this was kind of my life. And it almost kind of, I wouldn't say caused, I disconnected from my family because it was at 10 o'clock at night. I'm feeling no pain. And I'm like, I'm wanting to stay up later because I'm living my life. I'd go to sleep and I'd wake up. And first thing I do is wake up, I'm in pain, and just start that, cicada cycling, it's like pain in the morning. I'm great at night. So my days started to shift just because of, out of comfort. But ultimately, I'm back at the Lyme doctor. I'm like, what do we do? And she was still kind of like, antibiotics. And I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. I was like, because then it just wipes out everything I've done for the last months. And I'm like, I'm back to a square one. And the blessing in disguise was she left the office, the one that I was working with. So then I was like, okay, the Stram Center was the business I was going to, and they were very sensitive into Lyme. And so I'm like, well, I'm going to go to Dr. Stram because he's not going to leave. If he leaves, the business is going to close. So luckily I got an appointment with him, and it was about 4 weeks later, I got in with him. And then he was like, okay, so I see that you don't want to do antibiotics. And I'm like, no, I want to do everything natural. I want to do herbs, spices, or whatever. I want to protect my gut. I'm like, I really think, I was just adamant, like this gut bacteria is like what got me into this mess. And I'm like, I really want to say if my gut bacteria was healthy, maybe I wouldn't have got Lyme the way I did. All these other symptoms, I was always sensitive to gluten. It's like my history, it's like I just traced everything back to my gut bacteria. So then he was like, this new drug that's out there, and it's called disulfiram. And it's actually called anti-abuse. So it's the drug that they give to alcoholics. What it causes is you give an alcoholic this drug, and if he touches any sort of alcohol, he'll have like a wicked headache. But the quirk of it is, all these research scientists went out there and they tested hundreds of drugs, and it had a huge effect on Lyme. So it was like 4 times more effective, actually 10 times more effective than Doxy of treating Lyme. It's like, what do you want to do? It was like, I want to try it because I don't drink anyway. And it doesn't, compromise my stomach bacteria because it's not an antibiotic. And the best part about it is I went on that drug and immediately, I'm like, wait, something's changed. And I could feel it in my system. I was like, I wasn't quite as reactive, and I was like, so it's kind of like going along. I took it for 8 weeks, and then I could just feel my immune system was like not quite as sensitive. If I'd make one of those little indiscretions, I wasn't paying for it like I knew. So I knew something was different. And then just by quirk of matter, I ended up wrenching my neck, and I had to go to the doctor's office, and he gave me the prednisone, just a small, to treat that. So I took those for 3 days. And the funny thing is, I guess it would be the steroid in it, turned off my immune system. So immediately all my symptoms went away. And
Sure.
I didn't say it went away. I kind of was it told my immune system to calm down. Like, the threat is over. The Lyme is dead. So it's kind of like, and I would still wake up in the morning and I'd have just slight rheumatoid effects, or I call it rheumatoid, even though it's not, it's the, so I know my, symptoms are still out there, but it's like, it's drastic reduced. The best part about your program was I could never have gotten down to some of the, I'm treating, rheumatoid, or am I treating Lyme disease? And it's kind of, you got these two mystery diseases, and they're kind of like adding and fighting at the same time. And it's kind of like, without your program, and I hadn't cleaned up my diet, I would have never known which was, because it's like, to combat one, if I treated Lyme the way normal doctors went to, they went ahead with antibiotics, and it would have set me back. So I was stuck, but it was kind of like using your protocol was the only mechanism that could kind of get me down to the end. Like, I got my body healthy. And then it came up with this treatment that now, okay, the body could fight off the Lyme. Okay, now my Lyme is kind of gone away. Now I'm just left back to this, rheumatoid immune response, just subtle responses. So I know I still haven't got out of the ballpark. I just actually did another GI map to find out, okay, where am I sitting on my GI map to find out, where am I sitting on the good bacteria? And then I wake up in the morning, kind of first thing I feel, 2 minutes of slight pain, I'm still here, But in some way, it's such a blessing too, because starting back on your program, I weighed 265 pounds. Now I weigh 160 pounds. So I lost 100 pounds. It's kind of like, this was like life-changing. It's kind of like, I'm telling my son, I'm like, I ran a mile just the other day. It's like, I'm going to run a 7-minute mile here, so that's like one of my goals. Just, I want to eat healthy. I want to be more physically fit. And it was all using your program. Because it's just kind of like doing all of this, you, as a patient, you have to be like your biggest advocate. It's like, each doctor is going to have their modality that they just focus on. My Lyme doctor was always focused on Lyme. My urologist was focused on my, prostatitis. But, I can never, in my business, I'm an engineer that does a lot of troubleshooting on high-tech equipment. And it's kind of like, does the symptoms fit the problem? And really what was masking it, because I had the two problems and they overlapped, it was made it very difficult. I'm sitting here rambling.
No, not rambling at all. I haven't said too much because it's been so fascinating, and you're such a good storyteller that I was drawn in and didn't see the need to interrupt. A couple of questions, and I'll play devil's advocate here for people who are listening to this and wanting to know more. First of all, can you tell us specifically, just spend 1 minute or so just clarifying exactly what medication it is that you took for the Lyme? Give us the sort of the colloquial name and also the brand name. What dosage you took, how often, and for how long?
So Doxy was the big one. That's kind of like and I know I was on it for about 8 months.
Not the doxycycline. We all know that one because that's the one that actually destroyed my gut. I took doxycycline for 5 years for acne, and then I took it again for about 3 months prior to going to the Middle East, and developed a rheumatoid shortly after getting back from the Middle East. So we know that one. I'm talking about the one that was actually taken that the remission state alcoholics take. That was the one that seemed to shift the bar for you.
It's called disulfiram. So originally it was used to vulcanize rubber back in like the 50s. So it's kind of like something in the industrial world. The problem is that then all of a sudden the workers at the fabrication, started having problems with alcohol. So then all of a sudden the scientists started researching it. So then they actually kind of dual purpose. They're like, wait, this is a treatment now for alcoholics. We can use this as a drug to treat alcoholics because, if they take the pill, they want to stay from alcohol because they get wicked hangovers. And I was familiar with it because I was in the Navy. If you had any sort of alcohol incident, the Navy would put you on this drug because they're like, we're not playing around with you. We don't want personnel problems. Take this drug. So, I was familiar with it when he mentioned it, and it's one that you have to, you know, here in the Northeast, it's in high demand. I had a hard time finding it because it's not in high demand usually because there's not a lot of alcoholics running around in the world. So it's very, so I had to go down to the point where I'm calling pharmacy to pharmacy, like, do you have pills? I want your pills. Can I, and I'm like driving around, within 100 miles to get these pills, but I was desperate. I'm like, I got to try this because it's my only mechanism to keep my bacteria in my gut healthy and combat this Lyme. So it's kind of like it's a buildup, and it's one of these drugs that you have to take like 250 milligrams one day, wait a day, take it to another, and you're kind of oscillating, building up. And the next week you take it every day, and the next week you take two in 1 day. So it's a gradual buildup. It took me a month to build up to the final dose of 500 milligrams.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
And the same thing, it's like when you get off, you taper it off. But it was such a godsend because I was in this Pandora's box. I'm like, how do I defeat Lyme without killing my stomach bacteria? And then I was like, I came along. And I'm so thankful a year ago when I didn't go with the doctor's agreement, like, I'm going to put you back on antibiotics. And she was like, what's your plan? I'm like, I'll tell you that when I get to the end. I don't have a plan right now, but right now I need healthy. I need to get my healthy. And that's all I can say. And it was a godsend. This drug came into my life.
And are you still taking it or are you off it? And how are your Lyme markers now?
So I'm off of it and my Lyme markers are gone.
That's freaking incredible, isn't it?
And so I'm like sending out, actually this morning before I had this interview with you, I'm sending out to local editors, to the newspapers, like, and it's chronic. I'm like, you got to publish something about this disulfiram because, I'm in the Lyme world and I hadn't even heard of it, but I'm like, get it out there. It's cheap. It's like a month's worth of pills. It's like $10. It's like, you just,
to what extent, to what extent do you think that your dietary efforts helped with getting the disulfiram's result? Or do you think that someone who could just be eating a crappy Western diet, take this drug and get results like you do? I know it's just a guess, but what are your thoughts on it?
So I'm reading into some of the doctor's results. So he's had like 60 people on his test cycle, and he's put in 70% of the people he's put it in remission.
Wow. Yeah.
It's high, high to me. That's like catastrophically, like great results, And I just wonder, I'm like, is it diet related? Because it's like part of the Lyme doctrine is you have to clean up your diet. You have to get out of the gluten. You have to get out of the dairy, which is very similar to a lot of the Pattison, that you recommend. So I know there's people out there that are more strict about that. So, without looking at all the patient records, I'm like, well, is that the reason that people are, getting their diets, getting their bodies more, removing the stress from the immune system? And that, if all the 60 people would the numbers skew, so, I think it's heavily in the dietary. Right now, my world is all about diet.
Well, we know that disease-modifying drugs for rheumatoid arthritis and also biologic drugs, so if we're talking about methotrexate, sulfasalazine, these sort of drugs, Plaquenil, and then all your biologic range, the effectiveness of these drugs is influenced by the quality of the microbiome. So there are papers on that. We know that the microbiome is one of the variables as to how the drug will perform. So you cannot have a downside for having a better, healthy gut, and we should all be working on being the healthiest possible version of ourselves, regardless of as if we're on meds or not on meds, because it even helps the meds work better.
Yes, I agree 100%.
Right. So do you think that Lyme disease was having an impact on your rheumatoid arthritis? And here's a better question. Do you think you developed the rheumatoid or psoriatic arthritis symptoms because you took the antibiotics for Lyme?
I believe um, if I look at my immune system as a whole, that a Lyme was a portion about, it's in the background and it's tickling, it's tickling my immune system. So it's kind of already put my immune system on edge. And at the same time, it's like, once I started to limit, so I had, it's almost like in my immune system, it's almost like cumulatively, Lyme was adding a certain portion. My diet was adding a certain portion. And I had to use that metaphor. I had to start peeling away the onion to just find out, to tell my immune system to calm down, relax, go to sleep. But so I do believe if my immune system, and this is me, I'm not a medical expert, but I believe if I would have had a healthy immune system and I would have had a fully functioning bacteria in my bacteria in my stomach, my hydrochloric acid, because your stomach acid is just kind of like a chemical filter, it's a biological filter. Bad stuff stays out because you kill it going through the stomach. And, if I'd have had all those things running, I would have probably been one of those people that maybe does a short course of antibiotics and then Lyme would go away, or I'd have never got, I would have never progressed into this chronic Lyme portion that, is so detrimental to some people up here in the Northeast, it's because they're like, and the medical experts are kind of dismissive about, there is no such thing as a chronic Lyme. But there's enough people that get it. So it's like, why does one people get cured by 21 days of antibiotics and other people, lifelong effect just decimates their life? I believe it's because I had that compromised immunity. My stomach wasn't up to, so it's kind of like everything my lifestyle put me in that mess that I was in. Mm-hmm. So, and actually that was one of the things. You had a young gentleman, and I believe he was in the Notre Dame. He was becoming a priest, and he was talking.
Yeah, Gabriel.
One of the things he kind of was saying, was acceptance, kind of like his cured, until he accepted it. And it was like, that always stuck with me. And I kind of would wake up every day and I was like, I got myself into this, it's like, it's kind of, I accept what God's doing to me because there's purpose. And once there was purpose to this, then it was more acceptable because I'm like, God's got a purpose into this. And, praying about it. And I'd be like, this thorn that you put in my life. And it's, why is this here? More acceptance, because it's like, without that thorn, you wouldn't have cured yourself. You wouldn't have eaten better. You wouldn't take care of yourself. So that's why now, even though my Lyme symptoms are gone away and I still have that slight, arthritic, I'm like, it's totally acceptable because I know deep down, if the symptoms would go away, within a year, I'd weigh 265 pounds again. So it's kind of like, God's got the gun to my head, like, don't screw it up again, So it makes it much more acceptable knowing like all this was purpose, this makes sense. It's like, 5 years ago, I'm at the doctor's office for the Lyme and I just wanted a pill. Give me a pill, give me 4 pills. I'll take whatever pills. Okay. I'll quit eating gluten, okay. But, 5 years later, I'm 100 pounds lighter. My bacteria in my stomach are much stronger. I'm a different person, and that's where I can, toot your horn enough. It's all because of the Paddison program, it kind of got me there to the point where now I could, eradicate Lyme. Now I can just, instead of fighting 2 battles, now I can just go back to, okay, where's my stomach? This became the gel cell. I'm doing all the research. I'm listening to podcasts and any sort of pull in about the immunity. One guy was like talking about all the different ways that, increase your bacteria. And it's like, start using cold starches, kind of like.
Yeah. I remember that might have been with Dr. Horelak. He's a gut microbiome expert, and he talked about, the reheating of foods and letting them cool down and all sorts of interesting stuff. Yeah.
So, at the STRAM Center, I'm talking to, nutritionist, and she was like talking about a bacteria or a potato, like, you should incorporate a cold bacteria potato. And I'm like sitting there and I go rambling on this because I knew the background of what this guy had, and it was like totally over her head. She had no clue why. Somebody had told her it was a good idea. And here I'm sitting with this young lady. I'm like, I got more information than you do about some of this stuff. I'm paying you $70. So I'm like, but it was my job though, because it's like, who's going to take, you got to be your greatest advocate. Because I'm like, everybody's got their own side of you, but it's like, I'm the one living in spotty. I know, at the time, I just wanted to have a cold potato, but I couldn't because now I'm starting to have cold potatoes just because I'm like, I can, and it doesn't cause me 5 days of pain. So that's the best part. Now it's like, miso, I can finally have miso, So it's like, I'm back to your list. And, I'm like, it took me a year to get off the stage 1, but now I'm looking at all those, okay, stage 2, what can I add? And I'm like, oh my God, this has been such a long process, but.
Man, can I relate? Everything you've said, I can relate to so much. We're both engineers. I did a laser physics degree, optoelectronics, and I went into that field for 5 years. It took me a year to get off baseline, just like you. It felt like it was just failure after failure, and I just felt like, I had to basically adopt it as my life's mission to try and get well before I actually got the results. Just trying to do it even 99% wasn't enough. It's just, you have to be all in to the point of obsession almost. And that's why I've been sitting back and listening so quietly throughout everything you've been saying, because it's just been so fascinating to me. And what I want to ask you is, before I just pick your brains for a few quick tips from you. As a physicist and someone who's got an engineering mind, how has this felt in terms of satisfaction or interest levels, or in terms of a project? How's it felt as a person and as a personal development project to go through this process in a way that was almost forced upon you? You didn't ask for this disease. You didn't ask for these problems. I mean, is there an element of you that has changed? Do you feel like somewhat enlightened, or is there a way that you would describe how you feel about having been through this journey from a positive viewpoint and as a personal development viewpoint?
Hugely from a personal development, because it's kind of, we have a farm here, and we raise our sheep, and we have animals, and always along the line I had an engineer's mind, because I was like, everything has to have a function. It's like, if it doesn't have a function, why is it on my farm? So I'm like, oh, we had the sheep because we're going to eat it or we're going to sell it. Everything had to have function. I'm like, and I wouldn't say there was no joy. My joy was, trying to make this all stuff work. It was kind of like, sheep's sick. How do I fix it? The tractor's not, how do I fix it? So I was kind of, everything. I was a very practical mind. And then kind of going along this way, and I'm just like, in this, my foot was nailed to the floor in this 1 year, eating the baseline, could never get out of it, just circle. And my wife's like, I really hope you figure out what God's trying to teach you, because this really sucks right now. And I'm like, I don't know what he's trying to teach me, but I'll let you know if I figure it out. And then I think the point was, Lyme has just devastated me. My wife got Lyme too, so she had to deal with Lyme too. And then, our beloved golden retriever in the family, it came down with Lyme. And by the time we knew it had Lyme, it was in kidney failure, and we lost her 2 months. As much as I tried, and we tried to fix her, she passed away, and it was devastating, because that was like the one dog I never tried to control or change. I just loved that dog, and it was kind of like, it was the point where I was like, that dog had no function on this farm. It was like, it was just purely love. It wasn't a good guard dog, because it would just, basically pee if anybody came in, because it was so happy to, it just showed unconditional love to anybody, so it was like, that's all that dog had was love. And I was just kind of like, from a personal perspective, I'm like, wow, maybe there's more to life than just function. It's like, and it was kind of like almost a shifting into my personality, because it was kind of like, wait, love is so important. I was like, you always hear about the golden rule. And I was like, and God kind of winked at me when he told me about the golden rule through a golden retriever. So I'm like, this golden retriever showed me what the golden rule was, and it's all about love. And it was just kind of like such a dramatic shift in, that mind, body, and then the spirit was shifted on this kind of like, all of this kind of came at the same time as the Lyme treatment, the disulfiram came into my world. And I'm just kind of like looking at people in a more, how can I show them love on a daily basis? Mm-hmm. So it was, and I think that was the end, and everything just kind of like got better. So, but like I said, 5 years ago, when I'm just wanting a pill from the doctor to make my Lyme go away, to what I am today is just totally different.
Yeah. And it's a transformation that is beautiful in some ways. I mean, to be talking about wanting to show people more love, God's working through you in that way. And you may never have gotten to this level of I want to say, wholesomeness if you hadn't have had this experience. So
totally.
We have to find these wonderful good things in these horrible experiences. I mean, there's a lesson in every suffering.
And some of it, it's like, kind of ironic that, it's coming to Christmas season with the old, the Christmas story of why I was battling this rheumatoid arthritis. And my parents came to live with me for about a year. And I got to see, when I turned 18, I went to join the military, and I really haven't been home since except for visits. But, I kind of jokingly back then, I kind of was like, oh, this is like a Christmas story, because with my parents with me, I could see the past, the present, and the future, what they became. And I was kind of shocked that, because my dad was dealing with cancer, and he was pretty much terminal with the cancer. And my mom was his caregiver. And the part that was really ugly that I got to see is, he was on a lot of painkillers, and she got into his painkillers. So while they were here, I had to be the good son and try to take painkillers away from my mom. And I found out how strong, addictions can just override love. And, it's kind of like, but at the same time, all this is going on, I'm like, if I don't change, that's what I'm going to become. I'm like, I got to find a way to change, or I'm going to be those bitter two that are in my house now. So it's kind of like, it was a progression. It's kind of like, I got to see the past, I got to see the future, and it was just so ugly. And then I'm like still in this health crisis. It's like every day of my life, I'm waking up in pain, and it was just chronic pain. But it was just kind of like, finally, the last month or two, everything just kind of broke. The Lyme went away. My dog, I don't want to, the good thing is my dog died, but it was kind of like put into my face, like love, love is just so important, Everybody's like, you've changed. And I'm like, I hope it sticks too.
Wow. Well, this has been absolutely fascinating. I think that you should continue to push forward with your goals to try and teach more people, or reach out to more people about the potential of that particular medication. Given that it's had such great results for yourself, and it seems like you're quoting from medically published journals, the results that it's had for other people with Lyme. So, I'm really pleased that you've been able to share that on this platform. And, whilst we might get some comments from people, as you mentioned before, there are some people, the naysayers, but there might be some people who have Lyme, and this information that you've just shared today could be life-changing. So, I'm really excited to get feedback on this. I want anyone with Lyme who watches this to give us feedback and tell us if they've been able to source some of the disulfiram, and whether or not it's worked for them, if their doctor believes that it's the suitable medication, of course, for them. Because I want to develop a little bit of a discussion around this and see if we can find out if this is going to be suitable for a lot more people. And then just to wrap up, I was wondering if there are any problems along the way that you had on a micro scale going through this process that you were able to solve, that you might be able to share to help people, something on a much smaller scale. Maybe, the way that you reheated the foods, or the way that you played the mind games of sticking with the program. Anything that you think might help in case, we haven't covered it yet.
It's just every day I had to hear your voice in my head, like, you just want 1%. You just want 1%. And that was just kind of like, and every day I'm looking at your menu that you had like baseline and the different foods in different groups. And they'd be like, I wish I could be on phase 2. But then it's like, you're just looking for one, just kind of like coaching myself, 1%, 1%. And really that kind of like just being happy with that little bit extra, it's like, you kept saying this is a long march, could be 1 to 2 years before you fix yourself. Kind of like, it's hard, it's really hard when you just wake up in the morning and you're in pain. It's like, it's like you can't even see the sunrise before you feel the pain. It's just like, but I had to keep hearing your voice, 1%, 1%, and just keep pushing through. It's like, it's like, do I feel better than I did? Yes. Okay. Keep pushing through.
Yeah.
So that micro, it's just kind of like, don't have wild expectations of how, fast this, is going to be. And it's just takes a long time.
Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah. It's great to reiterate that. And, we didn't get sick in a short period of time. The body took many, many years to develop the problem. So it's obviously going to take time to unravel and reverse a lot of these problems. And, I'm glad that stuck in your mind because it was my experience, and that's what I stuck to. I just like, if I can be 1% better in a month, that's enough because eventually I'll get there, right? It's cumulative, these 1%. So we'll get there in the end. So,
but you had to do it. You had nobody to coach you at the time. You were kind of flying blind at that time, just by gut and what at least I could be like, well, Clint did it this way and he has all this support, at least, I guess sometimes, when you're developing things, it's always quicker and easier to be number 2 in the race. It's that guy who's first, it takes the longest because he's out there where nobody's leading him. So you were the trendsetter. Now we're all just following you.
Yeah, well, I made a lot of mistakes. It took a lot longer than it should have, and I wish I had have known what I know now because it would have saved me a lot of cartilage in my left knee, and it would have saved me cartilage in my left and right elbow. So, but hey, look, we talk about God's mission in our life and stuff, and I wouldn't swap the cartilage for the impact that I feel that we've been able to have as a community and share this information. So my elbow's working okay enough for me to lift weights at the gym that I want to lift. And,
right.
and so, life goes on. We move forward and we just take our blessings and work with the challenges and look for our 1% and all the things we talked about. So, there we go. So I just want to thank you for sharing this. This has been fascinating for me. I've learnt today some things too. Lyme is not my specialty. I don't claim to have a solution or expertise in that area. So it's been totally fascinating, and I'm obviously sorry to hear about your experience and the loss of your most beloved pet, and your wife got sick with it as well. So. Just before we close, can you identify a moment in which you feel that you were bitten by a tick, or do you feel that there was a causative moment?
It was unknown. It just, one day I'm back visiting my parents 5 years ago, and I got the bullseye. No clue of when it happened. Never saw a tick. Just caught me off guard.
Okay. Yeah.
It just happens.
Sure some people would be wondering about that as well. Okay.
But if anybody does, if they contact you and want any sort of information, you have my contact, send it my way. I'm totally willing to help talk, steer them, give them anything else or talk, coach. This morning, I'm sending out letters to the local newspapers, to the editors, like, you got to put something out into the newspapers about this treatment. It's like, it's chronic care. It's like, we need help. People in pain, we need to help them. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, fabulous. Thank you for that generosity. Yeah, what we'll do is contact me, info@pattersonprogram.com. Send through questions if you have about this episode, anything you might want to ask Tim, and I'll forward them on to his email address so that we keep his personal details private, but you will be able to reach and get to him that way. So, Tim, thank you so much. As I said, fascinating discussion here, and it's just been a pleasure to have you on.
Thanks, Glenn. God bless. Talk to you later.